Yes, sir. All right. Blake Puzon in the house. Welcome to the
Hello,
show.
hello.
Welcome to the
Thank you, thank
show.
you.
Yeah, how's it going?
It's going well, man. I just got back from a pairing last night, so
Yeah.
we're I've been working a lot. I basically did like 5 days on, so it's
5 days
like
on.
yeah. I got like 2 days off now, and then I'm back to work again. So
Just two
it's kind
days
of
off.
yeah.
Yeah, I have like 3 weeks off right now.
Oh, that's nice, man. I wish.
I don't know if it's nice. I think it's too
Yeah.
much. I think it's too much.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you kind of want to like get back in the air after some time off, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's
Yeah.
if you've been away from flying for a while, it's like the next time you come in for work, it's like the first day again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like you're flying like you're doing survey work right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you can only imagine like coming back from like 2 or 3 week vacation and having to fly like a CRJ into like LaGuardia. Like
Yeah.
it's even harder.
I know, I
Like I'm
know,
not gonna lie.
I know. I can only
Yeah.
imagine.
Oh,
So,
oh yeah.
yeah. So, aviation, being a pilot. So, what was your why? How did you start?
So yeah, a little backstory, I guess. I was born in Hong Kong. Both my parents are Filipino, but my mom was a flight attendant for Cathay.
Okay.
So growing up in Hong Kong, I would always like watch her, always travel the world and go to different places. And next thing you know, I'm like looking at her training manuals and stuff for being a flight attendant, right? So I'm like 5 years old, and instead of like reading children's books, I'm like learning how to evacuate an A330.
Yeah.
It's like so it was really young for me that I knew that I had like at least an affinity for aviation, and then. I think one Christmas I got Microsoft Flight Sim, and it just went from there, right? Like I knew I always liked airplanes, but then that was like when I was like, okay, I really wanted to be a pilot. Um, and then we moved to Canada in 2010, and there was this program called COPA for Kids,
Mhm.
where it's the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association.
Yeah.
They the Boundary Bay chapter, so in Vancouver, they had a bunch of these owners of like 172s and Cherokees and all that just take up kids for like a 20-minute flight. And they'll let them like handle kind of like a discovery flight, let them handle the controls and all that. And that was my first time like actually getting to handle the controls of an airplane, and I was like, okay, this is
Mhm.
this is something I want to do. And I think I was like kind of the catapult from there. Um, but yeah, like that was the start. It was like my mom being a flight attendant, and then like actually getting to fly a plane for the first time was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it
And
must
even like
be
even at a young age, right? Like it was a powerful thing to be able to do that. So
100%. Yeah. I mean, it must be, there's no convincing necessary on your part to convince your parents that you want to be a pilot, because they're probably like encouraging you from the get-go. Yeah, maybe consider being a pilot, something like that.
oh there was no convincing required. They were very much like on board from day one. Especially with my mom already being in the industry really helped. Like she kind of like already knew a little bit of what like a pilot lifestyle was like, what being crew life was like, and now that I'm working in the industry, it's really funny because there's a lot of differences obviously between being a regional pilot and working for like Cathay Pacific and doing
Oh
like
yeah.
all the broad flying, right? So it's like I'm always like talking to my mom about like the differences and what um what life is like, right? So
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome.
Did she kind of warn you that this is going to be the life of an aviator or anyone who's involved in aviation, that you're always away, something like
Oh,
that?
100%. Like, I mean, I knew it already, right? Like, just growing up, my mom would be gone for like 4 or 5 days at a time. And
Hmm.
I just kind of already knew that that was a reality of the profession. Um,
So there's no
but then
adjustment
now, yeah.
necessary, kind
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. Like, I kind of already, like, just growing up, like, that's how I was raised. And, like, when she was with us, she really made the effort to, like, spend time with us and do all that. So that was great. But I also knew that, like, a lot of the time she was spending time away from home. So,
Mm.
but I mean, the other flip side of it was like it would be days away for stretches of a time, but she would also be back for stretches of a time as well. So it'd be like, she would maybe work for 4 days, 5 days, and then she'd come back and be home for like 8 days before
Yeah.
going back to work. So it was like it wasn't like I didn't see her at all, but I did know that like she would have to go away for periods of time.
Yeah, in some way, it's actually better that you're away for like bulking, right? Instead
Yeah,
of working 9 to 5 and then you come home, you're already tired. You can't spend quality time anymore.
right.
All you can think of is to sleep.
Yeah, like, I mean, honestly, like it's really true. Like for example, at Jazz, we're guaranteed 12 days off in a month. And what I really like to do, it's harder to do as a captain now because my schedule is I'm on reserve, and that's a whole other thing. But as a first officer, I was really trying to work. I mean, I actually had more than 12 days off in a month because I was working more on the days that I was on.
Mm,
So every time I went to work, I was very, very tired by the end of the day, but it meant that I got to spend more time off and I
yeah.
got to enjoy my days off more. So, and you kind of like climb up the seniority ladder, you can do more of that. And then give yourself like a better quality of life in terms
Mhm.
of stacking your days off. Um, but yeah, like it really, I prefer like if I'm going to go to work, I want to work.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then when I'm off, I want to be off. I want to like do fun stuff on
Yeah,
my days off. So
yeah, I
yeah,
hear you. Yeah, if you're working, you might as well give me all the legs that you want within the
exactly.
limits, so that when I'm off, I'm off.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Mhm.
just it.
So where did you do your training?
So, shortly after the Copa for Kids thing, I decided I wanted to be an air cadet. And with cadets, they have a program where they sponsor your glider and private pilot license. It's a scholarship program, so there's a whole selection process. But I got my glider pilot license first. So they did that training in Comox. So I learned how to fly gliders. That was like a 6 week course. Came back, and then the following year, I got my PPL through the Power Scholarship as well. So they actually fully funded my PPL. But I also had to get it like basically in the minimum time. And like, so I was at 45 hours. I did it in like 7 weeks, which is like ridiculous. They sent me solo after like maybe 6 or 7 hours.
How young were you then?
I was 17.
17.
So like
Wow.
literally like the bare minimum to like solo to fly a plane.
Mhm.
I definitely did not feel like a competent pilot after. And I was like, okay, I got my license, and I'm like, I need like 30 more hours in the plane to like really feel confident. So I did some cross countries after that. I guess I also did my. You were asking like where I did it, but my PPL I did at Boundary Bay.
Mm.
Um,
Everything in BC, basically.
no, so that's the thing, right? Because I finished my I finished Power, which was at Boundary Bay, and then I took a gap year from high school. So I graduated high school after that, and then I wanted to because my mom obviously worked for Cathay. I wanted to work for Cathay as well. So
Oh,
I applied originally to Cathay Pacific. That's why I took a gap year from school was to apply for them. Um, and I made it through to the second stage, and then they rejected me after.
mm.
So I was like, okay, now I'm kind of like, I had my PPL, I had a couple 100 hours at this point, and I was like, like what do I do with my life now? Like I had maybe like 100 hours, and I'm like, this is like I was putting everything on going to Cathay, and I didn't make it in. That turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
But basically, my parents were like, okay, why don't you go get a degree?
Mm.
And I was like, okay. So I started researching what schools had a degree program. But I also knew that I wanted to be a pilot, so I wanted to find something that kind of combined those two worlds. Um, I found that there were a lot of programs in BC, but the programs were all business administration related, and I had no interest in studying business.
Yeah.
So I was looking at anything else, and I eventually settled on Waterloo, so the University of Waterloo, all the way out in Ontario. I had a friend that was going there. He was telling me about the program. He said he really liked it. So I was like, okay, let me consider it. And I did more and more research. I was like, okay, I actually want to go here. So I applied, and then the following year, that's where I went. So I did it's like a 3.5 year degree, and because I already had my PPL going in, they kind of just credited that already towards the degree, and I did everything post PPL at Waterloo. So it's PPL, IFAR, multi, all
Mm.
that. Yeah, so that's like a kind of like transitioned over out east to the other
So
side.
what was the program called? Like what
Yeah,
program did you
it's
get?
called Science and Aviation.
I
So it's
see.
the reason why I really liked it was because like I knew I wanted to be a pilot, so I didn't want to study a whole bunch of like crap that it wasn't going to be relevant, right?
Yeah.
So the nice thing with this program is that you have certain benchmarks and certain classes. So the classes are like, for example, Avia 203 was your CPL ground school, right? So you would be doing your CPL ground school, and then you get credit for that towards your degree,
Hmm.
right? So it's like less classes. Like I still have to take some science classes. I did an earth science minor, but for the most part, like the aviation portion was literally half of my degree.
Yeah.
So I was wasting less time doing a degree in something that I didn't care about. You know,
Wasting less
I was
time.
like, I knew I wanted to get a degree, but I also wanted to be a pilot. So it's like everything was kind of like combined together. And yeah, I thought that was really great. And then the other thing with Waterloo is that they had a lot of opportunities for networking in the industry. So I ended up meeting a lot of professionals while I was there. It did help me get like a couple of my first jobs as well in aviation. So it was like
Hmm.
that was really big. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. So was this degree that you took, is this something that you intend to use eventually, let's say after you're done flying, or you gonna,
Um,
are you considering being in, administration or in the office of some airline,
yeah.
or I don't know, maybe TC or NAV Canada, something like that?
I don't know. That's like a way down the line thing. I definitely like right now. I'm like very much like I want to fly. I want to fly. I want to fly. But you know, who knows, right? Like I think the whole point of the degree was to enable other opportunities as well. Definitely one thing that I've been missing for sure, and I've been trying to find a way to fill that kind of gap is I was a glider instructor for one summer. I only did it for a couple, like I taught the glider course that I was talking about earlier for one summer, and I really miss teaching. I
Really?
really do. I, that's the only thing that it's the only like kind of hole that I haven't really filled. As a captain, I have a little bit of that. Like I can kind of talk to my first officers and kind of give them this and give them that, but I'm not really an instructor, right?
Hmm.
So it's kind of part of me really wants to get that teaching thing filled again. So I don't know. Like there's I'm not I'm cutting around and seeing where ways I can do that. Maybe I'll start teaching like CRM or something, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Or a
Um,
training captain, something like that, right?
yeah, training captain is going to be down the line. I think you need to have like 1 year at least as a captain on the airplane, which makes a lot of sense. Like I'm still really trying to figure out the left seat role.
Mhm.
It's been a lot of fun so far, but it's also like it's a lot.
It's
It's
a
definitely
lot.
a lot to.
How long you been the captain now?
Uh, I just did my captain line check on November 17th
Last year.
last year, so it's like it's literally been
Nice.
2 months. So I've only got
Congratulations.
yeah, it's been awesome. But like I've had 130 hours now as PIC on the jet, and it's like holy crap! Like in that 130 hours, I feel like my brain has like
Exploded.
compounded, right? Because it's just so much like stuff that like being a captain is like a whole other level of being like in the flight deck, and it's a lot of fun. Of course, it's a lot of responsibility, but there's like a whole new element to it, and it's all the stuff that I didn't really expect would be difficult per se.
Like what are those
Uh,
stuff?
so I would say like okay, if you asked me before I started the upgrade, I was like, okay, what are my big concerns about doing the left seat upgrade? Um, it's the first was like I look like this. I'm very young. Right?
How young are you? How young are
I'm
you, bro?
24. I'm 24. So they see like a 24-year-old kid in the front with 4 bars, and I'm like, how are people going to look at me? How are people going to judge me? Right.
Yeah.
That's number one. That was like one of my big concerns. And then the other concerns were like, what if I make like a wrong decision? What if like, like if something crazy happens, like we take off out of LaGuardia, we lose both engines, I have to go into the Hudson River. Like I don't know if
There
I
you
can be
go.
Sully. It's like I'm a captain now, and it's like everybody's looking to me to make the decisions, and it's like, oh my goodness, can I make the right decision? Can I make the right call? Right,
Mhm.
and I think that was like a really really big worry for me. Um, and I thought the bigger like the what people have always told me like the in your first like 100 hours as a captain, you're gonna see stuff that you've never seen as a first officer.
Really?
Yeah,
Even though you
and
just sit
it's
right
so
next to each other.
that's what you think. That's what you think. And then yeah, like literally yesterday, it was we had four, so not one, not two, but we had to change airplanes 4 times.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
it was one thing was broken, one thing was broken. Third plane was making weird noises, so I refused it. And then
Mhm.
the fourth plane was fine.
Okay.
But it's a lot of it for me. Like I thought the difficult thing about being a captain was like, oh, like the worst case, like in-flight emergency,
Mhm.
or like having to do a diversion and all this crazy stuff that is like hard. And yeah, like you need to be able to do that. But I
Mhm.
found that the hardest part about being a captain so far, and then this is like the really the difference between being a first officer and a captain, is learning to manage your crew and learning to be a leader to your crew. And that's really like the big difference, because it's like, I'll be honest, man, like flying the airplane is by far the easiest part.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you just when you're in the cockpit, the doors closed, you just V1 rotate, take it to where you need to go, right? Like it's not hard. Like once you know how to fly the plane, sure, maybe there's like gusty conditions, you're shooting an approach down to minimums. Like that's of course still gonna have its element of difficulty, but that is nowhere near the hardest part. Um, and I think what really elevates it from being an FO to a captain is like learning how to talk to your crew, manage them, but without being like too authoritative. You know, like you don't want to be like, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. And it's been really challenging, honestly. Like sometimes I have flight attendants who are like, they can be really really senior, and they think things should be done a certain way. I'll give you an example. Like I had a flight attendant ask me to reset a circuit breaker for the lavatory because the light wasn't turning on in the,
Mhm.
because when you lock the door there, it turns on the light
Yeah,
right in
yeah. That
the
that it's
toilet.
occupied.
Yeah, right. But it wasn't turning on. So she's like, "Oh, can you reset the lav circuit breaker?" So I'm like, "Sure." But there's a process associated with that. I actually still have to call maintenance. I
Mhm.
have to write it in the logbook that I'm recycling the circuit breaker.
Yeah, is it
Uh,
considered as elementary work?
it's not.
It's
It's not even elementary work. It's not even down that line. But the purpose of writing it in the logbook is so that
anything
who
happens.
knows, right? Like if something were to happen, let's say 3 years from now, that airplane has fire in the lab. Well, they'll know that from the maintenance history that I reset the circuit breaker. And that's the reason why they put it in there, and they track the defects so that they know that, okay, the circuit breaker has been reset. But
Mhm.
the flight attendant has flown with captains who are much senior to me, and this is something we call it procedural unintentional non-compliance. So over time, it's like for over time, because it's like this is the way it's supposed to be done. Like for me, I'm a brand new captain, so I'm very very familiar with the way things are supposed to be done. But over time, people stray away from that because it's
Isn't
just
it
easy,
ironic?
right?
Isn't it
I know
ironic?
exactly which one to pull, right? I can like go back there and I'll be like, okay, it's this circuit breaker, ding ding, done, right? And then there, your light's back. But I took the extra like 15 minutes to do it right. And the flight attendant's like, what the hell are you doing? Like, just pull the circuit breaker, right? And I have to explain to her, like, this is the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
So it's challenges like this. Like, that's not what I expected going into the upgrade. Like that, like I wouldn't have thought like explaining to the flight attendant that I had to call maintenance to reset a circuit breaker would be the hardest part of the job.
Yeah. Especially if
Like
that's a
so far,
senior
that's really what the
FO.
challenge has been. Is like relating to them, and then again, again that's still the anxiety. They're looking at me. They're just seeing a 24-year-old kid in the left seat, but ultimately, like it's my ass on the line. If anything happens, it's my fault. That's what the 4 bar stands for, man. It's
Yeah,
all my
yeah.
fault.
Wow. First time hearing that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
so
I was
it's
suspecting that that will be the case. That
but it's
you're talking about senior cabin crew, and here comes the captain,
right.
which is 24-year-old plus you're Asian. Once you're 34, you will still look the same, but
That's what I've heard as well. So it's like, I mean, ultimately, I just the way I really dealt with that was just stop worrying about the age. Like for me, like if I just kept stressing out about being this young guy in the flight deck, it's gonna show to everyone else.
yeah,
So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna look the part. I'm just gonna act the part.
yeah.
I am trained. I'm qualified to do the job. So let's just do the job. Let's show up. Let's be the best captain that I can be and really commit myself to my crews.
Mhm.
Um, and so far it's worked out pretty good. It's not been without challenges. Like I said, like that was one example. Um, but if I am confident in myself and I try and exude that confidence, the crew will feel it.
Yeah,
And
100%.
uh, so far, I've not had any like challenges in terms of like respect. Like people have they still see the 4 bars. They still treat me like I'm a captain. So I haven't had any like major issues in that regard. But yeah, like honestly, just I act the part, and it just shows, right? Like that's all
Yeah,
it is. That's all you can really do at this point.
that's true. I mean, humans are like dogs and any other animals. Once you're scared, the dog will sense it that you're scared. But if you're not
Exactly.
scared or you're not worried, they will sense it.
Yeah, that's 100% it. Like it's very much if you are, and this is another like big thing, right? Like when you're communicating with your crews, it's very you have to be cognizant of the words you're using almost, and phrasing things in a way that's going to make them like you don't want to just if you try and explain to the flight attendant why we're delayed for a maintenance delay, you just start using like all this hydraulic 3B pump is like all it's messed
Oh,
up, so they're gonna maintenance is it's just gonna go right over their heads, right? So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you need to really
Use words that they would
explain things.
understand.
They'll understand, and then also not make them feel very scared as well, right? Like um, it's just like again, like I going into the upgrade, I thought, oh man, what am I gonna do if there's like a crazy emergency and I'm gonna have to do all this? That's not the hard part of the job. Like I'm fairly confident in most cases if there's some sort of malfunction or emergency that I'll be able to kind of deal with it because I know the airplane, right? Like
Yeah,
it's we don't panic when there's an emergency. We just we go into our checklist, we'll find somewhere to land, and we'll deal with it that way.
yeah.
Still probably going to be a really crappy day at work, but I'm not too worried about that. But dealing with the crew and then dealing with the communication aspect, how do you train for that, right? Like, there's no like we did a little, we did some
I
classroom
don't know.
stuff, we did some kind of we did some like cockpit mock-up stuff where we were kind of simulating it a little bit, but like the reality was once I was really in that left seat and having to manage the crew by myself, man, like that was like it is it's a feeling that's it's difficult to explain because it's a hard part of the job, and it's not something that I really expected to be the most difficult part. Um,
How
and
about have you experienced like having a problem inside the cockpit if the first officer, let's say, is a senior first officer, or maybe not even senior, but he's a new guy, but he's an old guy, older, way older than you. Have you
yeah,
had that kind of experience? Would you say
I
it's the same?
older than me,
It's
and
the same
it's funny.
difficulty.
I just said I was 24. I flew with someone the other week who's like the reverse of age, so 24, 42.
42.
It can be challenging, and oftentimes when there's conflict in the cockpit, I don't pretend to be the guy who's always right. Like I'm not. I'm definitely not the guy who's always right. The other day, like even last night, I realized I was doing my procedure with the we have like a wing light on the CRJ. I was turning it on at the wrong time, and the first officer actually corrected me,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Oh, really? It's like that?" And what I really like, my biggest thing with that is like I don't know. Like I don't know off the top of my head. I don't have the whole manual like ingrained in my head, right? Like I know some things for sure that are just like they have to be committed to memory, but then there's some things where I'm like, you know what? Let's take a look at the manual together
Yeah.
and let's see what it says. And I think that's by far in terms of cockpit conflicts, that is the best way to deal with it. Even though it might be something where it's like, holy crap, we're at like 200 feet, we're on short final, and something crazy happens. At the end of the flight, every single flight at Jazz, we have, at the end of the shutdown checklist, is a crew debrief. And we always talk, sometimes it's really short. It's just like, hey, that was a really nicely flown approach. I'm really, really happy with how that went. Do you have anything else to say? And then that's the end of it. But sometimes it's like, hey, can we just talk about what we did there, right? I've had a couple of FOs mostly at night, and it's a very common like yeah, I'm sure you're familiar with black hole effect,
Oh yeah.
right? Yeah, so it's they really get sucked into black hole effect at night, and it's like maybe 3 or 4 FOs in the last like the last 2 months that I've flown with who've like really like suckered into that, and they start like subconsciously just start pulling the yoke back at like 100 feet, and I'm like, we're gonna if we don't correct this, we're gonna go like land halfway down the runway, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's stuff like that where I could like kind of chat with them and just be like, hey, like let's push the nose down and like let's talk about that. Let's talk about like why we did that. And it's not to like slander them. It's not to make them feel bad. It's like
As long as it's not punitive, I
right.
guess.
It's not punitive. It's more like a hey, what happened there? Let's talk about it.
Hmm.
Right. Even if it results in the worst case scenario, we just get so super unstable. We go around, come back again for another approach. Again, we still do the crew debriefing at the end.
Oh yeah.
And it really gives people like I really my biggest pet peeve as a first officer was that captains were not doing the crew debrief well, and they weren't really allowing me to kind of say a piece about what happened on a certain approach.
What would be the reason
Or
behind that? They're rushing. They just want to go home, and that's
yeah,
good.
oh, crew debrief. Okay, good. We're here. Off to the hotel.
Yeah.
Like, it's like it's really for me. It's really really important. They emphasize this to us in training, but other than like it just being the right thing to do, it's more of an opportunity to just
Mhm.
chat about it, right? Because another thing with conflict is like if you're going to be with this person for 4 days, maybe doing 4 legs a day, 4 or 5 legs a day,
That's 16 flights.
you don't want like one conflict from one flight to brew and like stay with this person for the remaining 4 days, right?
Yeah.
Like if something
Yeah.
happens on day one,
Let's address it.
how, yeah, and then like let's address it because if we don't, and then it's day three of the pairing, we're tired. He's already starting to hate me, right? Because we just never talked about it, and the next thing you know, bang, there's a V1 cut. Yeah, we hit a bird. So like it's really like I very much encourage like free flowing conversation in the cockpit. I don't believe that I'm better than the person sitting to my right, and I don't think he's better than me. I think we're a crew and we work together. And it's like if there is conflict and it's like maybe there's a disagreement about something. For me, like my number one reference is like always just go back to the book. Let's pull it up. Let's see what the book says.
Mhm.
Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm right. Right? It's not about being right. It's about doing the right thing.
Yeah,
And
that's the thing.
ultimately, it's like, like, have I had conflicts in the flight deck where the FO like has challenged me on something where it's like, like the other night, it's like I was just turning on the wing lights at the wrong time. I'm like, why aren't you turning on the wing lights when I tell you when
Yeah.
when we're on the runway already? And he's like, I thought those go on with the takeoff clearance. I'm like, oh, maybe you're right, and he was right. He
Yeah.
was right. I was doing it wrong the whole time,
The
man.
whole
Like how many
time.
like how many times have I flown? I've been turning on the wing lights at the wrong time, and he,
So when is the
it's just
best? When is the right time to turn on the wing lights again?
it's with the takeoff clearance,
With the
right?
takeoff
So
clearance.
normally with the takeoff clearance, our landing light goes on, and the wing light at night. The wing light also goes on as well,
Mhm.
which I was like, oh, shit. Just it's
Yeah.
stuff like that, right? And the capacity to be like humble about that, and like there's this kind of perception that the captain has to know everything, right? But ultimately, you don't,
Yeah.
and you can be humble about it. And for me, it's just like one of the reasons why I love aviation so much is that you will constantly be learning.
Be. Oh, I thought you
You
were going to
will
say you
always.
will constantly be humbled.
Oh, that too. Oh my gosh, man! Like I could go and on about the times I've like had my pants turned brown. Like,
Mhm.
like I've been scared in airplanes more times than I care to admit. But
Mhm.
you grow from that. You learn from that, and you are like I can honestly say that I am a much better pilot now than I was a year ago, than 2 years ago, than so on and so forth, right? And as long as I'm kind of like putting myself in the cycle of continuous learning, and I'm still learning how to be like a better captain, how to do my job as best as I can. Um, as long as I'm still growing in that, then I think I can stay in this career for a long time. It
100%.
never becomes dull in that
Mhm.
regard,
Yeah,
right?
true. Yeah, and good thing that you mentioned earlier that whenever you have a conflict inside the cockpit, just the last resort will be let's look at the procedure, look at the
Yeah,
checklist. What I mean, it's not about the thing is it's not about trying to know who's right, but it's more of let's look at it both and
yeah,
check for the truth. You know what I'm saying?
right. Yeah, no, I'm definitely not the kind of guy who's gonna pull something out of my butt and say like, "Hey, this is the way it's supposed to be done." Or and another thing that I really liked is some captains have a way of doing things. So when I was in a first officer, they were showing me like, oh, this is the way I like to do things, and it's not against SOP or anything. That's just like this is, and they were very, very, very good at telling me, hey, this is not like in the book, it's not in the manual, but this is the way I like to do this, and it's not against any rules, but this is my technique, and it's like that's a very fine line, and I've been starting to use that with my FOs as well, where it's like this doesn't have to be the right way to do it, and it's nowhere in the book. I
But this is
say
also
this
not
very,
wrong. This is not
it's
also
not
wrong.
wrong, and this is just my way of doing it. One of those things, for example, we have a perf init page, so it's our performance, and there is a column in there, so you have your zero fuel weight. It's in the FMS, so I'm like plugging stuff in. There's a column in there for your fuel. I was telling the FO, this is my technique. until we have our fuel and the fueler comes up and gives us like the sheet saying this is how much fuel I put on the airplane, I set that to 0.
Okay.
Because when you do that, the plane screams at you basically. There's like something on your ND, there's something on your FMS, there's both FMSs, and then there's something on your PFD saying like message as well. It says check fuel at destination, and it's like that way we will never leave without fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like, or at least without checking our fuel. And I was like, this it's not written in the book anywhere, but that's my technique. And the FO was like, cool. I think I'm going to start doing that from now on. And I'm like, nice, right? And that's just like one example of that.
It's like your own. It's like your own checklist, kind of.
Right.
That's not on the checklist.
Yeah, there's all sorts of like little things we do that are like techniques. Like another one I do is if I have a checklist and it's like I'm holding somewhere because like we're not there yet. A very common one is like the before takeoff we have cabin secure. But the flight attendant has to call us and say, "Oh, the cabin's secure, the door's checked." But if we're waiting for that, I put the checklist on my yoke, like sideways, just to say that something's not done yet. Right? Again, my technique. That's not an AOM. That's not written anywhere. But
I mean, that's your own personal mental cue, basically.
And I think in any stage of your aviation career, you can develop your own techniques that may not be part of an AOM or a POH or something like that, right? Or even as a flight school, some flight schools have SOPs now, and that's okay. That's okay, provided that you're not breaking any SOP or anything like that, right? And it's not necessarily the right way to do things. It's just your own personal technique.
Yeah, it's a free for all kind of thing. You're not breaking anything. you do what works for you, basically. You mentioned hold. How often do you guys experience being asked to hold? Would you say?
Oh,
is it regular? Or is
like a proper like hold, like a
hold, yeah.
Oh, I've never done it.
Really? No?
I've never. I've had. Oftentimes, we've had. If we have flow, they'll give us a crossing time for a certain waypoint on the star. They'll be like, slow your airplane down so that you cross stave at this time, for example.
So that you don't need to be asked to.
Yeah, hold. And if we can't do it because we're still too high, we can't get too slow, then we let them know, and then sometimes they'll just give us vectors. And Vancouver is notorious for this. Oh my goodness! Like I actually don't really miss Vancouver. They've really been struggling with ATC staff shortages.
Yeah.
So I've had to be vectored almost like from kind of Kamloops, Kelowna area. So that's still fairly east. I've almost had to be vectored into U.S. airspace. Like I've been turned south, and then like continue south all the way to almost the border, and then they're like, okay, now you can go back direct state. Like it's crazy, man. I'll send you some pictures later of that because it's just ridiculous, like how much the vectors can be sometimes, and you have to be really cognizant of your fuel situation as well. It's like, okay, do we still have enough to make it to our alternate? Because otherwise, we're kind of bring it tight.
Yeah, 100%. Is it because understaff and too much volume and too much traffic going into Vancouver?
Well, I wouldn't say it's too much traffic. It's just understaffed, right? And then we always the common joke at Jazz is to like I always like to say we have to take all the Canadian controllers, bring all of them to San Francisco, and just let them watch because it's bonkers. San Fran is the most insane place in terms of like I'm at 500 feet, landing at 28 rate, and they just clear another aircraft for takeoff on the crossing runway. So I'm at 300. He's crossing the runway, like taking off, and then I'm like on short final. It's the one place that I've seen a 777 do a go around at like 50 feet.
Holy smokes!
Yeah, American. They just took like 10 seconds too long to start the takeoff roll.
Yeah.
And that was enough. Like they started to go around. I was like, oh
yeah.
My goodness,
I mean, that's why
crazy.
we see those videos, right? Intersecting runways and those accidents or close calls.
You look at the traffic volume there, and honestly, this is not a slander of the controllers at all, because the controllers are so professional down there. They are just, they are so good at what they do. And even when you do see those videos where it's like, stuff has happened and there's like some sort of runway conflict, they manage it. Like oftentimes they're like, they can catch stuff happening. Like for example, that 777 go around. Yeah. Like they already noticed that American hadn't started their takeoff roll. So it was like that split second while managing all these other airplanes, they're still able to notice that. And I think that really shows like the professionalism that they have. And they're like, look, we have tight margins, but they manage it well, and
Yep.
I feel like Canadian controllers have that kind of capability, but they're just not at that level at all.
At that
It's
level
not.
yet. I mean,
No, not even
they're used
close.
to a chill day, like not
Yeah,
so
like even
busy.
at Toronto Pearson, we have like 5 runways, and we only use like 2 of them at a time.
Yeah,
Whereas at San Fran, they have 4, and they use all 4 at the same time.
yeah, I know. I
That's
mean,
wicked.
when people talk about like Toronto Pearson, they're talking about, oh, that's a busy airport, blah blah blah. But the thing is, relative to the U.S. or SFO
Yeah,
or LAX maybe or JFK, that's a that's a different level of
hundred
business.
percent. Like it's not even close. It's like it's just the volume of traffic in a given time. Like they're
Mhm.
able to just get so many more airplanes in and out of the airport.
Yeah,
Whereas at Pearson, it's like, there's a guy who's 5 miles final. Just hold short and wait. It's like, okay, I guess.
yeah.
Um,
Holy
but
smokes!
yeah, it's
So
like that.
So you did cadet. Going back to the cadet thing. So did you
Hmm?
consider to be a fighter pilot or join the forces?
I
Is that
thought
why
about
you
it.
is that why
I
you
really
went
did.
to the cadet route?
No, not particularly. I was never really like big on being a fighter pilot. I wanted to be an airline pilot more than anything. Um, but my parents were trying to convince me to go to the military route, at least consider it. But my biggest barrier with that was my eyesight.
Mm.
Um, I needed to get laser surgery to even be considered,
Mhm.
because their restrictions are not the same as like a normal Cat 1 restriction. Like for me, like I guess for the viewers, it's like um, as long as your glass is correct to 20/20 vision, then you're fine, right? Which is what I've got right now.
For airline.
Yeah, for like a Cat 1 medical in general,
Oh yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
it's just like to do, but for the forces, I think their restrictions are
Strict.
much more strict. Like I don't think I'm pretty sure for fighter, you need to be just 20/20 or 20/30, like uncorrected.
Yeah.
So that was a big barrier for me, and I kind of kept straying further and further away from that.
Mhm.
And then the other side of the puzzle with the military is that you don't really get to pick what you fly.
Yeah.
So there's a good chance you'll go through the whole thing, and then they'll tell you, "Oh,
You'll
now you're
be
gonna
a
fly helicopter."
helicopter pilot. Yeah.
Which I mean, respect to the helicopter pilots. I think it's really really cool, but I
It's
don't
just
want to.
not
Like
just not for you.
I would, yeah, I would want to like go for a helicopter flying lesson, but I like my wings to stay on the airplane and not
Yeah.
rotate.
Fixed wing, not a rotating wing. For
But
sure.
yeah,
So
that
after
was it.
after flight school, how did you build your hours?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the answer is I got really like honestly, I got really really lucky. I found an opportunity kind of close to Waterloo. So I mentioned I already had my glider's license, right? So I was like, there was a gliding club that was maybe an hour's drive from Waterloo. So and they basically said like, you need to get a little bit of tailwheel time because they flew tailwheel airplanes for their tow planes. So
Mhm.
I figured out a way. I was like, okay, how can I get tailwheel time? So I connected with a couple people, and then I found one guy with the coolest airplane I've ever flown. Honestly, it's like a Cessna 170, 1954, like super super old airplane, but super well maintained. So he trained me a little bit on that airplane. And I also found another small flying club that was an ultralight. It was basically an ultralight. It was
Mhm.
a Blanca Champ, but they gutted the entire interior, so it was basically just fabric and like skin and bones airplane.
Yeah.
And so it was technically in the ultralight category. It had like 85 horsepower and cruised at like 60 knots, but I did a lot of tailwheel time on that, and I learned how to fly tailwheel. And from there, I was able to go to this gliding club, and I did some gliding with them. They said you have to continue to glide, otherwise, like you can't tow it for us. So I did some gliding, but then I also did some towing.
Mm.
So they trained me how to tow on the Citabria and the Piper Pawnee, which is I don't know if you know what a Pawnee looks like, but it's a single
No.
seat. Think of a crop duster.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a crop duster, and it's a single seat airplane. So there's no you can't take anyone with you.
Yeah.
So my checkout for that airplane was a written exam and straight up
You're on your own,
like
basically.
a crash course on like how to land the plane. I've never been so scared landing an airplane in my life, except for my first landing on that plane. I was like, holy crap, holy crap, holy crap! Like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, how do I do this?
And
Right?
this is a tail dragger, you said?
It's a
Or
tailwheel
yeah.
airplane. Here, I wonder if I can like pull up a picture.
I
Share
tried
screen.
to fly a tail dragger on my flight sim. I crashed
Oh,
it. I
it is.
I crashed
I don't
it.
think flight sim is like a great representation for like
I
how
mean, I was
flying
able
a
to land it.
tailplane is like.
I was able to land it, but the
Uh,
difference is you need to almost like treat it like you're landing on
yeah,
a soft field. You keep the pulling
that's a
the.
pawnee.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I saw one of
So it's like
those.
it looks ridiculous, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
you can't like with this long nose, you can't see anything out the front.
Hmm.
Um, and it's yeah, no, I mean trying to land that thing for the first time was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But it's no, it was a lot of fun. But that was the first way like I got involved, and it, honestly, I moved back to Toronto when I took the upgrade, and I'm looking forward to getting involved with this club again because they're just awesome.
So you're moving to
Um,
Toronto.
I'm back in Toronto now. I'm
Oh,
Toronto
you're in
based.
Toronto. Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I thought you're Vancouver based.
Nope, I'm Toronto based. I was Vancouver based as an FO. I was just living with parents, but now I'm like I've moved back to Toronto because most of my friends are out here from Waterloo,
Mm.
and basically in Vancouver, my mom and dad are also wanting to stay in the Philippines
Mm.
because they're basically retired now, right? So
So they're
they're
moving
kind of like
soon. They're
I
moving
think
to the
they're
Philippines
wanting to
soon.
go back to the Philippines. So I basically have no one really in Vancouver except for my sister, and
Mm.
I can always go and visit her whenever I want, right? With
Hmm.
my with the flying benefits as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, but anyway, like I moved back to Toronto to get involved with this club again. Hopefully, this sometime this summer I'll get back in touch with them.
Hmm.
But anyway, when the person who was originally training me to do the glider towing was this guy who at the time it was COVID, right? So it was kind of like on the climb back from COVID. Things were starting to reopen up, and I he was doing this job banner towing
Okay.
out of Waterloo, and he was the only reason why he was doing that was because he was laid off from Pacific Coastal because he was flying the Saab for them.
Yeah.
Um, but he was the guy who was teaching me how to tow these gliders. And I jokingly said to him, "Hey, if you ever need another pilot for your banner towing job,
Yeah.
let me know." And I was just joking, right? But then a week later, like literally 1 week later, he got his recall to go back to Pacific Coastal.
So there's an opening.
So,
So they need
so
a pilot.
he immediately called me because he's like, "I saw how you flew, and I think you're trainable. I think this is a good opportunity for you." So he basically, like, and at the time I was still trying. I was at like 200 hours, like just trying to figure out like what I was going to do for like my first job, and I was like maybe like a week away from starting a ground school to do instructing,
Yeah.
right?
Interesting.
But then he gave me that call, he gave me that opportunity, and then I. Obviously, I jumped on it, and yeah, it started banner towing as my first job. Which, if you told me from like my
That's
very
cool.
first yeah, if I was like starting my PPL and you told me that my first job would be
Would be
banner
better
towing,
towing.
I would have been because I don't know if you know like much about banner towing, but it's a sketchy job to say
I've
the
seen
least.
it. It's almost like as if you're landing. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's almost like you're landing on an aircraft carrier because you need to hook
Yep.
that rope, right?
Yeah. So we basically it's like 25 feet of rope and it's connected to a hook. And we keep the hook inside of the airplane. So we'll take off, we'll join downwind, and then I'll open the window and then throw the hook out
What?
of the airplane. It's connected to the back. I've let me see if I can pull this
that's
up.
that's actually
Uh,
pretty interesting, isn't it?
yeah, and then
It's
you kind of
harder than
do.
the jet because the jet they just push something and then the hook will just
Oh
deploy.
man, it was something, man. It was a job that I mean I'm really glad it was my first job because it gave me a lot of like valuable PIC time. Like it was a lot of like decision making and trying to figure out like what exactly to do. I have a video here. Let's see if I can at least kind of like show you a little bit of it. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
or maybe you can send it to me and then we just
yeah.
gonna include
Can
it.
you like put
Include
it
it.
on there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like you literally toss this hook out and you do a low approach. You go like 85 miles an hour, and we have the pole set up where it's like they're like maybe 10 feet tall, and it's just this rope that is connected to these two poles, and that leads 200 feet towards the banner. So you literally have to do this low approach, and then you have to time it right, but you basically just jam the throttle to max and you just yank it like 30 degrees nose up.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to do is create like a pendulum effect with the
Yeah.
hook, so that
Hmm.
it pulls the banner up into the air.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, learning how to do that was hard. Like it was not particularly an easy thing to figure out how to do, but then eventually I got the hang of it.
How easy
Um,
to miss that thing? To miss
I missed a
the
lot. You miss a lot when you're learning. It's like I did it in Waterloo in a control
yeah.
zone, which was questionable. I don't know why we did it there,
In a
but
control zone, so you're always talking to the tower guy.
yeah, So the tower's like, okay, you're clear for the banner pickup because they were familiar with their operation already. And
Yeah.
so
Hey, tower, I
and I
missed
kept.
it. I missed it. Go
Well, I didn't
around.
even need to tell them. They're like, okay, come back around for another try. It was like
Yeah.
the fourth time, and then I finally catch it, and I'm like, ooh, okay. So it's definitely it was a unique job, and it was a very heavily modified 172 that we were flying. Um, so it had a STOL kit, so short takeoff and landing. Um, and we'd frequently fly around at like 35 miles an hour. It was very, very slow.
Very
Very,
slow.
very, very slow. Um, there's one of my most memorable tows was over. I don't know if somebody still has. So there's two like most memorable tows I had. Like one was over BMO Field. Over there was that soccer game that was happening, and the winds were like just strong enough so that I could fly my 35 miles per hour and basically just be floating in midair with the banner like in
Yeah.
front of the soccer game. Like I was just this plane that was just floating there, and then I think a lot of
Yeah.
people took pictures of it and sent it, put it on like social media and stuff. The other one was I actually did a banner tow. I'll send you this photo as well. This is like my biggest flex. I don't know if you listen to Drake.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So Drake's producer actually hit up our banner towing company, and we towed a banner over his house.
Really? While they're
Yeah.
doing an MTV or a music video or
I don't
something?
know. I don't know. I think it's like his like as a congrats on releasing a new album sort of thing.
Hmm. It's
Uh,
actually a surprise
I think
for
the
Drake.
yeah, it was a surprise for him. I think the banner said number one in the charts, number one in my heart.
Oh,
I mean, we flew it over his house, and then he took a picture of it and he posted it on his Instagram.
nice.
So I was like, oh my god, that was so sick.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, like that was. I mean, it's just such a unique first job, and I never really would have thought that that would be my in.
And
The
how
other
long did
really
you do it
nice,
for?
just about a year.
Hmm.
Just about a year. The only issue with it was that it was I would say it was like 70% a sales job and 30% a flying job because I had to sell my own banners and reach out to clients myself
Wow.
and say and so if I wanted to fly, I needed to like find the clients to fly. Eventually, we kind of
So how
like
do you do it? You're roaming around GTA and then
I called
talking on
every single car
businesses.
dealership in the GTA. I called.
Yeah.
We eventually got in touch with a company in Montreal called Aerogram, and I think their plane broke down, so they started contracting us to do a lot of flying in Montreal, and that was amazing for me because I basically would pack up the whole banner and put everything in the plane and fly all the way from Waterloo to Montreal, cross country the plane all the way there,
That's a
and
lot
then
of
spend
hours,
like
eh?
three or 4 days there just doing banner tows, and then fly all the way back as well. So it was fantastic for me. Definitely great time building, but it was definitely obviously in the winter it's like there's no sales, and then in the summer there's a lot more. So I did that for about a year and built some experience there, and then I ended up going to my next job, which was at Bearskin flying the metro.
Mm.
So
How
yeah,
long? How long do you guys fly doing banner towing in a day? Like, let's say you're flying in a day, so it's
it
based
really
on
depends,
what they
right? Like
pay for.
yeah, exactly. So like I've done a proposal before, like just in a random field in Niagara, and like that's like they really just need the banner flying around for 15 minutes, right? Because they just pop the question. It says, "Will you marry me?" on it, and then you can fly
Yeah, yeah,
around,
yeah.
and they do the proposal, and then that's it, right? And then I come back and land. That's maybe only like an hour, right?
Mhm.
When all is said and done. But for the longer, like the corporate, the meat and potatoes was the corporate flying, right? Like it was for like I did a really big
Because it's
contract
longer,
for
longer hours.
yeah for Moosehead Brewery. It was probably the biggest contract I ever did. Probably around $40,000 worth of advertising that they spent, and I spent maybe 4 hours, basically the entire plane's worth of fuel, just towing around the beach in the summer, just going like back and forth on the shoreline, kept going in circles, and then once I was like, okay, I only have like an hour left of gas, I just
Yeah.
stay back. So like I've had long days, I've had short days, and it's really. I mean, unfortunately, they never. I really wish they taped up the stall horn in that plane because the stall horn's going off the whole time.
Yeah, because you're slow.
But and music going on in my 820s. I'm just flying around with Bluetooth and trying to drown out the noise of the stall horn. And it's
Nothing
there's no
better, eh?
autopilot, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you're stand flying the whole way. The summers with the window open as well. Like,
Mhm.
so it was fun. It was a fun job.
And
Yeah.
then you went to Bearskin afterwards.
Yeah. So that
Uh,
was like one of the another one where I like I had the connection from before. So
it's
through
really
Waterloo,
important, eh? Well, networking is really crucial in terms
I
of.
was actually just talking to a friend of mine who is in their last year in Waterloo. They're starting to like look for jobs and apply for jobs. I was telling him, other than jazz, I've never gotten a job in aviation that I've just directly applied for.
Hmm.
It's all
Interesting.
been through connections.
Through
Like I've
network.
never ever had like I mean I've had like one maybe. I didn't even land the job. I think I only got the interview.
Yeah.
I never actually landed a job. So it's all through connections for me. Um,
Mhm.
in first year, in my first year at Waterloo, I met this guy who was a pilot for Air Canada, and I noticed that all the first years they weren't going to the Air Canada booth because it's like you're not going to work for Air Canada after grad, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the Air Canada booth was actually kind of empty, and I was like, well, I want to talk to the Air Canada guy, right? So I talked to him, introduced myself, and I learned he was on the A320 as a first officer. I was like, okay, cool, cool, cool. He used to be a Waterloo grad as well,
Yeah.
like way back.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, so I had that connection, and I kind of forgot about it. Like COVID happened, and then it's my last year now. I should also mention that I was doing this whole banner towing thing. COVID was weird because it actually pushed me ahead flight training wise
Really?
because of
Also.
the COVID. When COVID happened, they started a staggered recall once people were coming back.
Mm.
So I was at my CPL time building phase at that point, whereas the other people in my cohort were kind of still working on like the CPL like training. I had already done my flight test and all that. I just needed to time build. So I was one of the first people that they called back because it's time building, right? It's all solo flying. You could do that
Yeah.
safely, right? And then with the COVID environment. So that actually pushed me ahead of the rest of my class. And I was in a situation where I actually finished my group one IFR, but I still had one more year left of school.
Mm.
So it's really interesting. That's why I was able to do the banner towing job at the same time. I actually did my group one IFR flight test, and the following day I started that job as a
Wow.
banner tow pilot.
Hmm.
So the timing there was really great. But anyway, so I was doing the banner towing job in while being in school, and I was only really able to do that because classes were still like partially
Remote.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was only able to do that for that reason. Um, but then eventually, in my last year, they were doing a networking event. It was the Girls Can Fly event at Waterloo,
Hmm.
and I
That's
ran into this
the
guy.
female aviation
Yeah,
thing. Women in
exactly.
aviation.
But I see the Perimeter and Bearskin Airlines booth, and lo and behold, it's Colin. It's the guy that I met in first year, who's an Air
Yeah.
Canada pilot. But now he's at the Bearskin booth, and I was like, "Hey, I remember you." Like I
Yeah.
start off the conversation shaking my hand, shaking his hand. I remember you. And he turns out he's now the director of flight ops at Bearskin.
Interesting.
And we were chatting a little bit, and I was like, "Hey, I have 500 hours now because I was
Yeah.
doing the banner towing job already,
Yeah.
right?" So I was like, well, what does it take to get a job at Bearskin? He's like, "You have 500 hours?" And he asked me about my experience, talked about it, and he's like, "Oh, why don't we set up an interview later this week?"
There you go.
So like that's literally like the
And then
first year in
the
me
rest is
is like
history.
never, yeah, right. Like I never would have thought that meeting that Air Canada pilot here would lead me to my first turbine job,
Oh yeah.
right? So it's like to the people who are like scared to talk to the Air Canada booth, like it's not necessarily about getting that job at Air Canada right away. You never know how things are kind of going to go in
It's planting the
aviation. And for
seed.
me, right, exactly. And for me, I really tried to make it a point to build my network as much as possible. It's such a small world now that I'm in the industry and working. Um, I've seen how many of like these different connection groups have just collided. Like I
Yeah.
like people that I've flown with, like some of my FOs are people who instructed people that I've mentored in the past, and it's like
Yeah.
all these different like levels of connections, and it's like it's just so cool to see. And I only really got there because I took the time to like go out to these networking events, go out meet these
Yeah.
people, and it's
100%.
when you're there, the purpose isn't to like get a job, but
Immediately in that company, be
it's just
known.
to build your network and to be known. And believe me, this industry is so small. And like I said, I never got a job in aviation that I just went on App Canada, sent in an email, and then applied that way. I never got a job that way. The
Yeah.
only way I got a job was through connections, and it was luck. Like I never like you could not tell me from when I was just working in my PPL and cadets that would be the path. I thought I was going to go to Cathay,
Mm.
and it didn't work out. And now it's like like if you told me how the story was going to unfold, I would have never believed you,
Yeah.
right? And it's totally different than the way I thought it would have played out.
100%. Blake, one sec. I really need to pee. I just finished this. I'll be back.
Okay, cool. I'll grab some water then.
Sure.
Right back.
Oh, it's all good.
I think it's just a scammer. Typical phone scammer. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So yeah. So banner towing, and then flying for perimeter for bearskin perimeter medevac, right?
No, Bearskin was so I was on the Bearskin side. You talked to Paul, obviously,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
Paul was on the medevac side. I was on Bearskin. And Bearskin was very interesting because it was mostly pavement to pavement and it was all scheduled flying.
Hmm.
But we were an airline. We had scheduled flights. And the whole purpose of Bearskin was now everything's kind of merged together with Perimeter. But Bearskin's whole purpose was to connect people from different cities that are between Northern Ontario and like Winnipeg. So, for example, if you wanted to fly from, let's say, Sudbury to Thunder Bay, you would have to go to Toronto. You fly
Yeah,
down to Toronto and then fly back to Thunder Bay.
yeah.
We kind of solved that problem. We were the connection there.
Direct.
We were kind of like a bus.
Yeah.
So the western side was Winnipeg, Red Lake, Sioux Lookout, Thunder Bay, and then the eastern side it was Thunder Bay, Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, and there's one and North Bay.
Hmm.
So it's like it was a bus. It was literally a bus, and it would kind of connect people between these cities. Um, and yeah, there's a scheduled service, right? So
Who are your
we did it in
passengers?
so I was Winnipeg based, so I was flying mostly flying that western route. A lot of people, so Red Lake had a lot of was a big mining town, so we had a lot of miners that we were flying. Other than that, we had so Sioux Lookout. Sioux Lookout, we called it the Pearson of the North.
Really?
Yeah,
It's
because
it's
it was
busy?
kind of like it was the hub of getting people to northern destinations. So Wasaya operated out of there, Perimeter operates out of there. So to get to anywhere, any of like the northern reserves, they would operate out of Sioux Lookout.
Yeah.
So people would fly from Thunder Bay to Sioux Lookout, from Red Lake to Sioux Lookout, from Winnipeg to Sioux Lookout, like, and then connect to random communities up north. So places like Shamattawa, Sandy Lake, Pikangikum. Like these are places you probably never heard of, but they're all
Yeah,
just like
no.
little places that are First Nations communities up north. So it's kind of a mix of those people. A lot of people were also, just trying to like if they're from those places, like say Casablanca or like somewhere that's like you couldn't really get to. Obviously, there's no like medical services there, right? Or like stuff where they have to get like I had like a lot of cancer patients, for example, that needed to get to their appointments. They would do those in Winnipeg or Thunder Bay. So we'd have people like that on our aircraft and like flying them place to place, right? For whatever reason, they needed to go. And sometimes the flights were there's 19 seats. I would say the average load factor is about 80% full,
Mhm.
but I've had it where it's like been a completely full airplane, like all 19 seats, they're completely filled up, and I've
Yeah.
also had it where we only had like one passenger.
Really?
So yeah, it really does vary on the day, and it's and like I said, it's a bus, right? So we can take off, and it'll be like 19 people, and then everyone gets off in Red Lake, and next thing you know, we're flying empty to Sioux Lookout,
Mhm.
right? So it's just it really felt like it was the most 9 to 5 aviation job I've had, where
Because it's scheduled. You already know your
it's
schedule,
scheduled
right?
service, right? Like it was we had 318, which was the 6 a.m. departure, and we had 362, which was the 12 p.m. departure. So it was
Mhm.
one of those two. And the unfortunate truth of it was that it got boring very, very, very fast. Like I started memorizing all the approach plates because we only flew into these 4 airports, maybe
Yeah.
a fifth. Sometimes we would fly to Dryden.
Yeah.
And occasionally we did like a really cool charter. Like I did a flight up to Churchill, Manitoba, which is just on the border of Manitoba and Nunavut.
Yeah.
So I did a flight all the way up there, which was really cool. And
That's where
then
the polar
sometimes
bears
we,
are, right?
yeah, the polar bear capital of the world is in Churchill.
Yeah.
Um, it's really funny. They have a sign up there that says there's a bylaw in Churchill where you have to leave your car doors unlocked at night.
Oh yeah, so that if people are being chased
Good
by bears, they can go
polar
inside.
bear to go inside.
Yeah,
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 which is
yeah.
crazy to me. And it's literally in the airport. It says you must leave your car doors unlocked after 10 p.m. And it's like, oh, like
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
you're in polar bear country. Right.
Interesting.
So like
How would
yeah,
you
like
Yeah, go ahead.
mhm. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
How would you describe flying the metro? I'm hearing a lot of stories about flying the metro.
Um, it lives up to its reputation, man. It is a one crazy airplane. I mean, I think back to like when I flew it, and I'm like, how the hell did I do that?
Yeah.
It's just like I think they were smoking something when they designed that airplane, man. Like they were. It is just so inherently. unstable in so many ways. Like it's just like you look at the wings, and these like little stubby wings, and then we call the 1A seats. So if you're a passenger, you're sitting down, the
Yeah.
wall of the plane is like there, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you're sitting down, the wall's right there. The blade of the prop is like there.
Really?
So we called that first row of seats, we called it the shish kebab seats. Because if the prop uncouples, even just like a little bit, it's
Yeah.
over. It just goes straight through the fuselage and you're done. You're shish kebab. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's very silly design choices. It was a quirky airplane. And hand bombing that thing in like full IMC, two minimums, with only a six pack, no autopilot, and the plane is also inherently unstable and is actively trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember when I was talking about pants turning brown moments? Like, yeah,
Yeah. One of
like
those
I'd say
moments
like
in
80% of those pants turning brown moments were from the metro.
yeah, it's a regular thing
There,
in the metro.
oh man, it was something. I loved flying that airplane VFR, man. Like VFR, I had
VFR
some of
no
my
no problem, eh?
yeah, like some of my best memories were like flying at 240 knots. We flew from Dryden to Sioux Lookout. It's only a 15-minute flight anyway. 240 knots. We were doing it at 1,000 feet.
Oh yeah. Well, circuit
That
height, eh?
was awesome, man. Like I loved it with passengers on board too.
Yeah.
So it was like it's memories like that I'm not going to forget. But I've also had some really scary moments in the metro as well. It's a very it's an old airplane. It's a quirky airplane. It's a loud airplane. Like it is like you better have hearing protection if you're a passenger.
Oh wow.
And we don't provide it. I don't know
No.
how we don't provide it because you will get hearing damage. It is
It's that
ridiculously loud.
loud.
It is that loud. Um, like I had my AirPods in like this, but they have noise canceling on it, and it's still like pretty loud, even with the
Hmm.
noise canceling on. So like I can't imagine like the poor like lady who doesn't bring like earplugs or something. Like you're gonna destroy your ears.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
so
I
it was ridiculous, man.
How would you describe Sioux Lookout? Because I had a job offer at Sioux Lookout to fly the metro, one of the metros. I rejected it
Uh,
because I was
Still
like,
look at this.
maybe not for me. And they want you to stay for, I don't know, 2, 3 years. I was like,
Yeah,
maybe not.
Sioux Lookout is it's okay. Like it's not the worst. There's a lot of pilots there, so definitely a pilot community. Uh, the summers there are really nice, from what I've heard. Like I haven't had like a layover in Sioux Lookout, so I don't really know what like life there is like. But I've heard it's like there's like really good lakes. It's pretty. It's a nice looking place,
Hmm.
but it's obviously pretty remote, middle of
Yeah.
nowhere, right? But everyone that I know who's lived there has kind of just had like a close bond with the other pilots there.
Oh yeah,
Right?
for
No
sure.
one goes
Because
there just to live there. Like it's just because it's a place to build your hours and get out.
yeah,
Um,
it will not be a good idea to if you're just gonna go there to build your hours, and if you don't know anyone, it will be,
well, I mean, yeah, like from what I've seen, like people who've come there without knowing anyone is
it'll be a
the other
challenge.
pilots. The other pilots are generally pretty accepting, and they'll like let you join their circles.
Hmm.
Um, because they kind of have to, right? Like it's like
They don't
everybody
have
knows
it.
everybody, right?
Yeah, no choice.
I guess that kind of also like leads into like your reputation because if you're gonna come in and you're not gonna be competent or you're gonna come off as like a really cocky person,
Yeah.
right? Like that's kind of the warning, I guess. Like
Hmm.
the circles are small. The circles are very, very small, and once you build a reputation for yourself, like that's what's gonna stick in people's heads.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I mean, it's interesting. Aviation is this the industry is small and yet it's big as well to the point like you're a captain now. You might be like it's the beginning of the year, so you might be flying with this FO now, and you might not fly with this FO anymore for the rest of the year, something like that, right?
yeah, yeah, 100%. Like it's totally possible. But then it's also possible that like the guy that I just flew with yesterday, I flew with him 3 times this month alone.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's totally possible. Like either side of the coin, right? It's just totally luck of the draw, right?
100%.
But
And because of that, since you flew with this FO like for 3 weeks now this month, it means that there are some FOs that you will not fly with within this year,
yeah, totally
right?
possible, right? Not everybody's gonna fly with everybody. Um, but that's kind of fun of it as well.
Yeah,
Didn't fly
100%.
with new people. No 2 days of work are the same at all.
Yeah.
Not even close.
It is small and yet it's big.
Yeah, like I mean, it is such a cool career, honestly. To if you really like think about the essence of it, like you show up to work and you're meeting someone. You're meeting, for me, it's three different people, right? It's the FO and then the two flight attendants. And having never met any of these people, you're expected to fly a plane to 39,000 feet to potentially a destination that you've never been to before.
Yeah.
It's just like when you really internalize that, it's like, dang, like how does this work, right? How do you do that? And
Yeah.
but it's like the symphony because everybody has their own SOPs. They have their and we all do it together and we get it done.
Hmm.
We get it done. Like that was me last week going to Deer Lake. Um, Deer Lake, Newfoundland. I've never been there before in my life,
Me
right?
too.
And I
Never
was
been
like,
there.
no, you don't need to. It's trust me, it's not that great.
Yeah.
Um, but I was like, okay, we're gonna operate this plane, and we're gonna go there. And the FO he's also never been there, right? So it's like, um, it's very very cool in that regard, where you can just kind of, despite that, still operate the plane and make it happen. And
100%.
ultimately, like you're bringing people home, right? You're bringing people home. You're bringing people to their destinations. You're bringing people to where they need to go. And I really like that I'm doing that. And I'm doing it
For a
for a good
living.
cause, right? Yeah, like it's awesome. It really does. I am genuinely. I do feel fulfilled doing this job, which is
Hmm.
good. There are definitely rough days. There are days where I'm like, I would rather do anything else than be in an airplane right now.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to report that they're few and far between. There's not too many of those days out there.
Interesting. You started pretty early. Looking back, do you think or feel like you miss out some of the regular, I don't know, when you started 17 or something, a regular 17-year-old would experience that you weren't able to experience because you were doing your flight training already and
Mm,
you're too busy studying?
I That's a good question. I mean, yes and no. Like I always wish I could always spend more time with like friends and stuff and like make more memories in that regard. COVID definitely put a huge hole in like the university experience. Like I still wanted to go to university because it's university, right? Like it's a part of your life, and it's the one time. One thing really stuck out to me, like the aviation professor in my first year, they said to us like, welcome to Waterloo and whatever. It's like your first class or whatever, and she's like, this is going to be the one time in your life where you're going to be surrounded by people who love exactly the same thing that you do.
Hmm.
And I that really resonated with me. So I found my friend circle, um, and unfortunately, COVID really hurt that circle a lot because it was just like we couldn't spend time together, right? And it was difficult. Um, and people kind of fell in and out of our friend group. Um, and I kind of wish we had more time to like just like have it like if COVID didn't happen and we were able to kind of spend more time together. The story might have played out a little bit differently, but then I would have those memories as well. So
Hmm.
it's kind of a mixed. I have very mixed feelings on that because for one, I'm much further ahead in my career than I ever could have been if
Oh
things
yeah.
kind of played out normally. But now it's like I have less memories with like the friends that I've had in the past. So right now I'm
I mean,
also
it's a
kind of
trade-off,
like
right?
right? Like I'm also very much like it's part of the reason why I moved to Toronto is to be closer to my friends here and to not leave them, right?
Yeah.
And try and make memories in that regard. Like now I'm kind of settled in. I'm enjoying this job, and right now I think what's important is to just kind of like take life a day at a time, enjoy it. Enjoy it is like the big thing. Is like yeah, I've been grinding, 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 grinding. Now I'm here,
Yeah.
right? I'm here. I'm doing it. I'm a captain. Life is good. Let's
Captain
like
at
enjoy it.
24.
Yeah, man.
That's something.
I still can't like comprehend it, but
Yeah, I
it's an
know.
awesome feat, and I am really proud of myself for getting here. But like I also just like I feel like I just need to like a very common question I get asked, and I'm sure you're gonna ask it later, is what's next for you? What's your plans, right?
Yeah.
And it's like right now I have some ideas of what I want to do, but right now I just don't care.
Yeah.
For once, I'm just going to take a chill pill and enjoy the left seat and get my multi PIC time and just enjoy it. Because
Hmm.
like right now, I really am not too concerned about the future. I'm sure there's an argument to be made that you got to be thinking about your career and all that. And but right now, I'm not. I'm not. Everybody's like, when are you applying to Air Canada? And I'm like, I just made captain at 24. Can I not enjoy the left seat for a little bit? I don't really
100%.
care. And there's this notion at Jazz of people like going and doing their upgrade and then like immediately leaving and going to AC. And I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. Like personally, I don't want to be that guy. It's not that I don't want to work for Air Canada ever. Like it's not true at all. I would love to work for AC eventually, but right now I'm content. I'm enjoying my job. I'm really happy to be going into work every day. Um, so I'm just gonna enjoy it. I'm just
Hmm.
gonna take some time and enjoy it. And when it's time to move on to the next thing, then I'll worry about that when that time comes.
Yeah,
But
100%.
yeah, like it's very very common where it's like, oh, what are you gonna do next? Even by my FOs, they're like, oh, when are you going to AC? And I'm like, I haven't even applied, bro.
Yeah.
Like I don't even like that's just the reality of it. And it is a problem for sure. It's going to be something that I'm going to worry about, but it's not something I'm going to worry about today.
Why do you consider it's going
There's
to be
no
a
point.
problem?
Um, the biggest issue I find with jazz, this is kind of more of a low key thing, but the biggest issue that pilots have here is that in terms of career development, it's kind of a hindrance to stay here. Um, and it's really difficult for people to justify staying here when you can go to a different company, make more money, fly a bigger plane,
Hmm.
um, all that sort of stuff. And I think what people really want and what will convince people to stay here is progression in their career. So I'm a captain now, which is great. I enjoy it, but I'm kind of just stuck where I'm at. And I can't really do anything
There's nothing
past this
else
unless
left.
I go somewhere else,
Yeah.
right?
Or unless your company buy, I don't know, 737 or an A320 maybe.
See, the thing is,
It's not
with the
worth it for
way
them.
Jazz is structured, is that we are under what's called a capacity purchase agreement
Yeah.
through Air Canada. So Air Canada gives us um, like their name basically, and we put it on their plane, like our planes. So we own the aircraft, but it's also like we are at the mercy of Air Canada. They tell us what routes they want us to fly, and they tell us where we're going, when we're going, and a lot of the operational commercial decisions are made by them. Like
Yeah.
actually, not a lot of all of them. All of the
Yeah. Yeah.
commercial decisions are made by them, right? So one month we can be doing San Diego, and the next month we're not doing San Diego anymore. So they put an A220 on it instead, and we're seeing a lot of like replacing the CRJ and the Embraer with the A220 as well. So it's
That's
like,
good.
yeah, well, I mean, it's good for them, but like for us, we're just kind of losing out on a lot of the flying, right?
Mm.
So, and then the other complaint that a lot of people have is that our flying is not very, like I mentioned earlier, like I like to work on the days on, but um, just because of like I could get into the way pay works with piloting, but it's really complicated. But basically, um, the gist is it's a lot better to do really long flights than it is to do a whole bunch of really short flights because
Hmm.
you're doing less work for more pay,
Hmm.
if you think of it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and then so what the common complaint is in Toronto specifically, our flights are really short, and we end up having to do 4 flights in one day. And we get paid the same as someone in Vancouver who was doing like a Vancouver to San Diego and back,
Yeah.
right?
It has a lot to
It's
do with the,
even
the the cruise time and the preparation if you have a lot of
exactly
legs.
right. So like, and then one obviously you're going to be more tired after doing 4 legs rather than just doing the two,
Yeah.
right? So it's stuff like that that are the common complaints right now. I'm still overall fairly happy.
Yeah.
But like eventually I'm going to get to a point where I'm like, okay, career progression. Now what's the next thing?
Yeah.
And I'm just not there yet.
Yeah.
Right now I'm like I just want to enjoy this, and I think there's still a lot more to come in terms of my own personal leadership and captain like development, and I
Yeah. It's a
really
good
want to
training
spend
ground.
time. Yeah, and it's not like it's not even a training ground because it's
Yeah.
like it is.
An
This is
actual
real,
thing.
man. This is
Yeah.
705 operations. I
Yeah. It's
still
not.
have
It's not training.
if something happens to me, it says the plane says Air Canada on it.
Yeah.
Right? Like they don't care. They don't know anything about jazz. Like the general public just sees AC and then they're like, "Oh no, something happened to an AC plane."
Yeah.
So I treat it with the same. Like there is no difference in the level of responsibility between flying a plane that seats 76 people or flying a 777 that seats like 400.
Hmm.
It's not like, oh, I'm only flying 76 people, so I'm only going to take like what 1/4 of the responsibility of the 777 captain. Like, it's
Yeah.
not how it works, right?
No.
Um, and like it's definitely like just getting to live it and experience it and to build experience in this environment in this position. Getting humbled, letting the pants turn brown every now and then, is just going to push me to be better and better and better. And I figure I have a 1 year lease here at this apartment that I'm living at in Toronto. I figured I at least give myself the end of that 1 year lease to this absorb all of this that's happening before I make even consider making another career move.
Hmm.
Like that's kind of like where I'm my personal thing is where that's where I'm at. Um,
Yeah, I
because
agree. I
it's
think
like
that's how it should be.
it's just like I'm so young. I've got so much time. Like
Yeah.
I just want to enjoy it for a little bit, and it's great. And and more than enjoying it is I'm getting like multi-jet PIC time, right? And it's just awesome. And like more like that's just the number, but also the experience that comes with that. And it's just invaluable, right? So I think it'd be really silly to just like leave and go somewhere else right away. Um,
I just something just came into my mind. Like, you mentioned you're young, and we've been talking about all of your career plans and all that. But aside from piloting, there's some aspects of your life that you need to attend to as well. Like, I don't know, romantic relationship, something like that.
yeah.
What would it take for a woman to be considered as Blake's girlfriend?
So you're talking to a guy who just got out of a long distance relationship.
Holy
So
shit! I didn't know that. All right. Let's get
oh
into it
no, it's all good.
because it's starting to be it's a thing nowadays. It's because people are
It's
not,
100% a thing, man.
everyone's
And
just meeting online nowadays.
my mom is a fantastic example of this, right? Like my mom and dad for a while were long distance. She was living in Hong Kong, flying for Cathay. My dad was working in Manila. So it was like they kind of have experience like being in a long distance relationship in aviation. And I think what it really boils down to is your partner needs to fully understand the career. They don't necessarily have to work in the career, although I feel like that helps in some level, some regard. But they have to like fully understand that you will be away for 4 days at a time. You
Right.
will have a wonky schedule. Like my days off are like random, like today, right? It's a random Wednesday and a Thursday. I'm off for 2 days and I work on
Yeah.
the weekend,
Yeah.
right? Like they have to be understanding of that, then be understanding of the fact that you're going to be in all these different places. Um, and I feel like they really have to get a grasp on that career. And I feel like that's probably the most important pillar of like an aviation relationship. And there is this notion that in aviation, like people just don't have good relationships, and I can see where that kind of stems from, but it does also like it takes part from like both parties to like really like put extra effort into it because it does make it harder. It's
I
not
would
impossible, but it does make it harder.
I would defend all the aviators. I think it has a lot to do with, if you're an aviator, I mean, any, just like other jobs as well, that, you just have higher standards in terms of what you expect in terms of a job, in terms of relationship. And if you're not getting if it's not meeting the standards, then what's the point of keeping this?
Right? So in this case, it was so like our worlds were just kind of going in like two separate directions, and it was like okay, we kind of like agreed mutually that this is probably not going to work out,
Hmm.
which is hard because love,
Yeah.
but at that point it is the right thing to do, and it's hard to like really admit that, but realistically, you kind of need to be on that path together and to be in line and to understand each other's kind of lives. Um, it's tough. It's tough. It is really hard. Having a maybe 2 year relationship, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
so that's part of it.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that question hit home a little bit, man. Like this is like very very recent, but yeah,
Very
no,
recent.
it's very valid though, and I've flown with a lot of guys. Like when I was in the right seat, I've flown with a lot of captains who are on their second, third wife already,
Oh
right? Like, and it's very
yeah.
like you know what I mean. Like and it's like it does it make me a little bit nervous?
That's it.
Because a little bit, right? But it's like it's not. I think it really emphasizes the importance of like trying to find the right partner
What
right?
would
Before you
be?
like
How would you
settle.
describe your the right partner?
It's just like it's definitely like I said, it's like understanding the career, understanding that the relationship has to like survive within the bounds of what the schedule looks like, right? Like, I mean, there's really great benefits to being in aviation. Like, for example, the travel benefits. Obviously, like we, but you know, you have to be able to understand those bounds and to live within them and build your relationship based off of that.
Hmm.
And the reality is like that's why it worked out for my mom and dad is that they understood each other, right? And you you just got to you got to do it. That's like the number one thing. And then of course just like the normal other like finding a good partner stuff,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
good personality and all
Yeah.
that. But like you know, that's like that is like a very real thing. And I feel like in this day and age where people are just like on Tinder and all that, and they'll go
Yeah.
on like online dates, we don't put enough effort into finding that right partner and really before like really settling down with them, you know. And it's just the reality. It's just the
Yeah.
reality. It's unfortunately it's not exactly easy, and aviation, just given the nature of it, it means you have to put in extra effort on both parts. Like
Yeah.
just because of that, that's how the career is. That's how it
Yeah.
is, right?
100%.
So,
And yeah, and if you know, if you're not comfortable being by yourself, maybe aviation will not be for you, because whenever you're flying, you stay in a hotel, you're just by yourself, especially in the city that you
yeah,
don't know anyone. You know.
um, that's why you go out with the crew.
True. If
That's
if
what
if
you,
if the crew
nine
is
times out
is
of
is is, is
yeah,
down to roam around.
yeah, 100%. And part of it as well for me has also just been learning to. I guess this is another thing I really didn't expect on like joining this career is like learning how to do things alone,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're on a city in a city, I have learned to find the joy in exploring that place by myself. And I normally don't like to travel places by myself, but now I don't really have the option. Like it's like, okay, I'm in what was the other day? We were in Philadelphia. So the FO I think wanted to do their own thing, and then the FAs were so the crew didn't want to go out with me, which is fine. Like they could do whatever they want. They want to go shopping. They want to go to Trader Joe's, which
Yeah.
is like that. Like every flight attendant wants to go to Trader Joe's, and I'm like I couldn't be bothered. There's nothing I want to buy there, man.
Yeah.
So I want to do my own thing. So you know I go out into the city and explore by myself, and um, that's something you can learn to do. And I've like found places. A nice thing about this job is as well. Like I've been to cities that I never would have thought I would ever visit. Right, like I would never like pay to fly myself to this
Yeah,
random
right?
place. Right, like Deer Lake, Newfoundland. Like what the hell? Like I always try and find something interesting in every city, even though it's something small. Like in Deer Lake, it was -7 degrees, -8, kind of cold, nothing too cold. And the weather was fine. Like it was clear skies. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna walk to the beach.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I did. Like by myself, I was like, I'm gonna go walk to the beach. I'm gonna see it. And you know, I took a nice hike down there, and I was like, the more you can kind of like condition your mind to like find something fun to do rather than just like rot in your hotel room and just watch
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get in so late, like this, you're so tired already, so it's like okay, you're not gonna do anything. But if you have the time, like I always try and just push myself to leave the hotel room, do something, right?
Do something,
Something.
yeah.
Yeah, like whether it's like go find a nice cafe to have coffee by yourself, and or you know, it's you learn how to kind of adjust to that, and it's been good. I've had some really good layovers where all I did was just you know enjoy alone time and
Yeah.
be by myself, right? Um, so it's a good mix.
When you're doing all those alone stuff, walking on the beach, hiking by yourself, do you like are you listening to music? Do you listen to podcasts, audiobook, or you just
Mm,
contemplate or enjoying the present moment?
no, I think I just kind of I don't listen to anything. I just kind of you know go for a nice walk and um, sights and sounds. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so it's very different. Like especially like um, with jazz, I've had pairings where it's like over 4 days, we're in Yellowknife, San Francisco, and Denver.
Hmm.
And it's like these are three distinctly different places, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, how do you like? I mean, first off, how do you pack for a trip to Yellowknife and San Francisco?
Yeah,
It's like one place is like plus 25, and the other place is like minus 36, and it's like what the
yeah.
hell? Um, and you know, it's difficult, but it's also like again, like you very actively have to try to find the beauty in every little city that you're in. But it's minus 36 and you don't really want to go outside. Well, that's one thing. But
Hmm.
that night, I was still able to get like a beer with the FO or with the captain at that point, right?
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, cool. Right? You know, even just if we can socialize, I always try to with the crew, but sometimes it's not possible. And if I'm going to go out by myself, then I'm also okay with that.
Hmm.
It's just learning like how to kind of find something to do in every city, right?
I agree.
Um, and it's part of the for me. I've learned to make that a fun activity. Right? It's like, what is there to do in Deer Lake, Newfoundland? Like, it's
Yeah,
like
is
you're
that why
like
you?
on Google Maps
Yeah,
and you're like trying to figure out
yeah,
like what is there around the hotel that I can walk to? Oh, there's a beach. That's what I ended up doing, right?
yeah. Hmm.
So it's like if then I'll generally invite the other person if they want to come, and if they don't, then it's whatever. It's okay,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 100%.
So,
Do you have any hacks in terms of addressing jet lags? Because
oh, jet lag
traveling
is
traveling in different time zones.
Uh, thankfully, as a regional pilot, it's not too bad because you're
Hmm.
only like maybe 1 or 2
One to
hours
two
at
hours, yeah.
most. Newfoundland is the worst. I just don't get it. But their time zone is like plus from here. I think it's plus 1 hour 30 minutes. So the 30 minutes, I don't know what it does, but it just destroys your circadian rhythm. Like I
Yeah.
have never, ever, ever had a good sleep in Newfoundland. So that is like the hardest one for me to adjust to. It's like, what the heck is it? This 30 minutes thing like destroys me, man. You're in the
The half
cockpit.
hour.
Yeah, and then we usually have like really like early report times as well in Newfoundland. And so like 5 a.m. report in Newfoundland is 3:30 in Toronto.
Hmm.
Right, so that means 5 a.m. is the pickup time. So that means you have to get up at 4, which is 2:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So your body is just like, what the hell is going on? And yeah, the answer is caffeine.
Caffeine, yeah, we were
Yeah,
talking
like
about it earlier.
yeah,
I
like
just finished
honestly,
a monster here. I just
yeah, the energy is like. Unfortunately, it's kind of tough, right? Like you can't. We don't at Jazz. We don't have any controlled rest in the flight deck. Some other airlines they do. Um, but you just gotta do what you gotta do to get through. And fatigue can be a really big killer. Like it's very difficult to kind of manage.
Mhm.
And one of the other like this is like outside of that even like going to a new hotel. And this is another thing I didn't really expect about this career. A hotel and sleeping in a bed that I've never slept in before, and then having to wake up early the next morning was really hard for me to adjust to.
Mhm.
So I've had to learn how to get comfortable in like a bed that I wasn't used to and
Oh,
sleep like just be able to sleep in a bed that you're not
yeah,
used to, right?
yeah.
Because you need the rest to operate the next day, right? And it was difficult to kind of. I don't really know like what I did to overcome that. I just I guess kind of got used to it.
Hmm.
But like the jet lag is not really the problem. It's more of like trying to. For me, I always try and stay in the same time zone. So if I'm in Toronto, thankfully most of the flights here stay within Eastern. But if like we go to Minneapolis, for example, it's an hour behind.
Hmm.
Then I'll still like keep my body clock in the Toronto zone. Um, then this is probably a bigger question for the wide body airline pilot to go like
Yeah,
across the
go.
world, right? Like
Yeah.
it's much harder for them to
I mean,
deal
that's
with.
why they have
But
longer
that's
layovers, right?
yeah, but it's also that it's the same strategy. Like they get in at like I don't know, they'll get in at like 3 o'clock, but it's already midnight, so they'll go to sleep and then they'll wake up when it's like midnight in the
Yeah.
city that they're in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
So I think
it's
there's
stuff like
some.
that.
I think there are some supplements that you can take in terms of addressing
Yeah,
biologically, or some people
you
I
can take like
know.
melatonin, I think, to like
Yeah.
just fall asleep, but I kind of like. I mean, I don't really use it to be honest. Um,
I don't think that's healthy, and that's
no,
good for anyone to take it regularly.
I think the other thing is like just exercise, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
is like
100%.
making sure you go to the gym and like if you're not sleepy, like tire yourself out,
Yeah.
and you know maybe have a good meal and then hit the hay, right? Like you have to be kind of disciplined with it because if you like doom scroll on TikTok the night before you're pairing, you have to fly the next morning. It's like, oh my god, you know, like how do you do
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah, I think that's
So
what I heard with some people. That's what they do. Like whenever they go to a different place and they land there in like an odd time of the day, they just hit the gym. They just
Yeah.
hit the gym regardless what time it is, and
Oh
so
yeah,
that
100%.
it helps them readjust their circadian rhythm
Yeah,
for the time being that they will be there.
absolutely. You need to kind of yeah, you do have to be somewhat disciplined on your layovers because some of our layovers, like the average layover length, I would say is about 15 hours at Jazz,
Hmm.
which is not really all that long if you think about it. The longest I've had is 24. We do have some 36s in the network as well. Like we have 36-hour Winnipegs right now.
Hmm.
Um, but we also have very, very short ones. Like we have an 11-hour 49 Charlotte layover right now, which is
Hmm.
very, very close to min rest. For us, it's 10 hours is min rest.
Yeah.
So if you're a little bit delayed, you're getting to the hotel and it's like we're right at that 10 hours. And those ones you have to be very disciplined. It's like you have no time to really do anything. You just need to if anything, maybe you hit the gym and then you go straight to sleep.
To the point that
So
it's better to have like lesser layovers. Just bring. Let me just go home. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, the nice thing with Jazz as well is that they have a good mix of pairings. There's 1 to 4 day
Hmm.
pairings. And for me, I like doing the 4 day stuff. Like I just like being away. I mean, I'm a single guy, right? So like there's nothing I really have to do here.
Hmm.
But like I like to be away for a couple days at a time and then come back. Like I just got off a 2 day and then I did a 3 day right after that. So,
Cool.
it's a good mix and sometimes it also changes because it depends on what kind of day you're doing, right? On the like for example, the other day the first day it was like a 3 leg day. So I did I can't remember where we went. Maybe like Pittsburgh or something. Pittsburgh back to Toronto, and then we flew to Philadelphia. We
Oh.
overnighted in Philadelphia, but then we had like 16 hours. We didn't have to leave until 4 o'clock, and all I did on that second day was fly back to Toronto.
Yeah.
So those are kind of nice,
Yeah.
right? Whereas having to wake up at 7 a.m. for example, and having to do a 4 leg day, that's obviously a little bit harder. So it's not a one size fits all approach. You have to kind of manage based on what the pairing is like doing, right? And unfortunately like they've gotten better with it, but in the past we had some where it was like you'd have a late start and then the next one was an early start,
Hmm.
which is like, oh my god, I hated that. I hated that so much because you didn't really know how to condition your body.
Yeah.
But the crew planning has gotten a little bit better because we were complaining about it. It was like it was difficult to kind of deal with um
Yeah, I mean,
because
good
your
thing.
body's in
Kudos,
there. Yeah,
kudos to the management that they listened to their pilots and did something about it.
there's still some out there for sure. Like it's not
Yeah.
perfectly fixed, but it's better than it was several months ago because it was like
Just several
um,
months ago.
we have fatigue reports as well.
Hmm.
So it's like we can always it's separate to like an SMS, but there's a fatigue report that you could do, and it's like, hey, how are you feeling this morning? I'm like, oh, I'm a little bit tired because I didn't sleep too good last night. It's non-punitive. It's just like, hey, like this is how it is, right? Like, and I've done
So
there's
what happens?
nothing. It just goes to the company, and then they collect
And
those reports.
and you still show up for work?
Oh wait. Well, I
Oh,
mean, depends. Like
oh,
how like, if you're
I
like
thought it's like a sick call or something. If you're fatigued, so.
so okay. If you book off because you're fatigued, then you must do a fatigue report.
Hmm.
You have to, but you can do a fatigue report whenever you want. And because it's literally on a scale of 1 to 10, like how tired are you, 1 to 10, right? And even
Mm.
if you're like a 5 tired, and you can still kind of go to work, but it's like, listen, I'm a 5 tired because this pairing is not built well. And you could say like,
Mm.
you can kind of type your comments, and that's where they get those changes from the pilots, like sending stuff like that. We also have this
Interesting.
thing called fatigue units, and it's more of a crew planning tool. The pilots don't really use that, but they accumulate based on your time of starting the day and how many legs you're doing. There's all sorts of factors that give you fatigue units, and you can only have a certain amount in a certain time frame. So there are ways that they're managing it. They call it a fatigue management system, and this is a Transport Canada thing. They have to like
Yeah.
implement this, and that's one of the ways they kind of deal with that. They have to uh, maintain track of your fatigue units, and
Interesting.
they can pull you off of a flight if you exceed a certain number as well. So
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
interesting. It's very interesting
That
for sure.
once you're close to the limit, it's almost like you're close that they're worried that you're close to committing more errors because you're fatigued.
Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, just based on the nature of our flying, will exceed other cars limitations prior to fatigue limitations.
Hmm.
So the most common is the most common where I've looked and pulled off of a flight because I was going to exceed a car's limitation was the 60 hours and seven.
Mm.
But I'd say that's like by far the most common where like maybe it's happened to me like three or four times in my career so far at Jazz, where it's like, okay, I've been working so much that it's like they have to pull me off. Because if I exceed that, I can exceed it and go to 70 and seven, but then I
Hmm.
have to have like 5 days off,
Yeah, and that
right?
will screw up their
So
scheduling.
exactly. So it's like it's better to just pull them off now and then call in a reserve pilot to do whatever flying was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Um, that's the other interesting thing because as an FO, I was a block holder, but now I'm a reserve holder again because I'm now pretty much at the bottom of the list as a captain here in Toronto.
Hmm.
So reserve is a it's very interesting a Jazz. I don't know how I can't attest to other airlines, but obviously it's on call. We have three types of reserve. We have A, E, and B. So A is 8 a.m. till 10 p.m. E is 3 a.m. till 5 p.m. And then B, I think, is 4 till 4,
Hmm.
4 p.m. to 4 a.m. So that's the overnight, like for the graveyard. We
Yeah.
don't have any reserve B in Toronto, thankfully. Thank God. Um, so I've been kind of between E and A. And what I like to do, because I personally like to fly, right? I don't like sitting around the house waiting for a call. I'd rather
Yeah.
just know I'm flying.
I
So
know.
if there's something, we have what's called Flicka. It's shows open time. So if there's a captain that's not assigned to a flight for whatever reason, so they could have booked off sick, they could have reached cars limitation, they could any reason, right? It'll just show up. We can email crew scheduling the day before saying, "Hey, I'd like to put in my bid to fly this pairing."
Hmm.
So I'm always up. For me, not every reserve pilot. I think Paul doesn't do this because he likes to be at home with his family,
Oh yeah,
right?
for
Like he
sure.
wants to be at home, right? For me, I want to fly, so I'm like a hawk for this stuff. I have alerts set up when something goes into open. I'm like, okay, I'm already emailing through scheduling, saying, hey, can I do this?
Yeah.
And it goes in seniority order. So somebody senior to me bids it, then I don't get it,
Yeah.
obviously. But if nobody else bids it, it's fine.
Hmm.
Then instead of
Interesting.
being on reserve, then I already know the next day I'm flying this, and this. So
It's better
it can
for you
be
to know it. Yeah.
for me. I personally like it.
Yeah.
Paul is an interesting case because Paul it works out well for him because he's a senior reserve holder in Vancouver. So if he's senior, the way it works is if nobody bids for a certain pairing, they'll call from the bottom up. So they'll call the most junior pilot first, say you have to
Mm.
fly this. And if he's like, can you pass it to someone else?
Hmm.
Then it will call the next person, then the next person, then the next person. So because Paul is so senior, he barely flies because there's all these people below him,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, it takes a lot for it to go to him. And if he wants something, he sees something in open that he wants to fly, then he can always bid to
He
crew
gets the
scheduling. And
he gets the first dibs.
he basically gets first dibs if he wants to fly, right?
Hmm.
So it's like that's kind of how it works. As a block holder, you bid for your schedule every month. There's a monthly bidding process. It's very complicated. I'm not going to get into exactly how it works,
Yeah.
but it's like you can ask for like certain pairings, certain days off, all sorts of stuff. And your bid is really determined based on your seniority. Like if you're very senior, you can ask for something very specific. Like I only want to do San Diego's. That's like
Yeah.
the most senior guys are always doing that, right?
I have a destination girlfriend in San Diego. Can I always get to San Diego?
I mean, honestly, like you'd be surprised, man. It's kind
Yeah.
of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, Otherwise, like the junior ones, like for me right now, my only bid is days off. I want these days off. That's it. That's the whole bid for me. I don't
Mm.
do anything else because for me, I'm on reserve anyway. So they just assign me reserve days,
Yeah.
and then I just ask for my days off. This month, I actually got the days off that I want, which I'm like pretty happy about. For February, I mean,
Hmm.
January they totally screwed me over. So
Yeah.
it's like being junior is definitely like seniority does matter a lot in terms of like determining your schedule and all that.
Oh
So
yeah, speaking of seniority, I asked you this last time, in terms of the union seniority. So let's
mhm.
say from one company to another, how big of a factor does it play being
It's very
member?
simple. It's very simple. It's so when you get into your class, so say there's 20 people in the class. The way it works is they will show you a list of positions available for that ground school. This is very only specific to Jazz, so I can't speak to any other airline. But this is how they do it. So Jazz, they'll show you the list of positions available. So they'll be like, there's 6 spots for Toronto CRJ first officer, 3 spots for Vancouver Q first officer. And it's like they'll just show all the available spots. And then once all the available spots are shown, the following day you do what's called a seniority draw. So they will draw someone's name out of a hat. That person is first, and then whoever that name is will get to pick from the available list of positions first.
Okay, so are you saying that you're in terms of, let's say there's 20 people in the class, right?
Mhm.
And only 10 is a former who came from a company that's a member of Alpha, and 10 from I don't know, flight instructors.
Yeah.
So everyone gets an equal
So
opportunity. Is
yeah.
that it?
So I'm getting to that because basically, if let's say no one is from Alpha, no
Yeah,
one's from Alpha, then we just draw the hat, right? It's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
first pick. So I draw my name, and I get to pick from the list,
Yeah.
right? If you're part of Alpha, and in my case, I was the only guy who was part of
Really?
Alpha. I was the only one. The only one. Bearskin was part of Alpha, and then I got the Alpha seniority, so I was the first pick. I was able to pick Vancouver CRJ first officer.
Mhm.
That was the right away I was able to pick it. But if there's multiple people who are in Alpha, say like let's call it three. There's usually not more than like five. I've never seen more than five.
Really?
Yeah, it's not very common because well, jazz is kind of like an entry level position. Like there's not that many other places that you can really go to. It's like with Seiya, Bearskin,
Calm
like
air.
Calm Air maybe, but Calm Air is kind of tough to get into anyway. So it's all sorts of like um. But anyway, like if you're coming from that other company, and let's say there's two or three people, then it's based on your Alpha seniority to determine who goes first
Mm.
when you joined Alpha specifically. So yeah, for me, like I was the only one, so it didn't really matter. So I told everyone the night before, I'm going to pick Vancouver CRJ right
Mhm.
away. So they already kind of plan what they want to pick as well. So
Yeah.
the way it works is I picked, and then I draw the second name out of the hat,
Hmm.
and then that person draws the third name, fourth name, and then obviously as you go lower and lower and lower, the list of available positions gets smaller and smaller, and smaller. And that's
Hmm.
also the way you draw is how your seniority is determined. So out of the 20 people, I was number one, and then two, three, four, five, and then that list gets appended to the master seniority list in the company.
Wow.
So it's just at the very end, right? So that's all it is. It's like that's just a nice thing that Jazz does with Alpha seniority. I can't speak to other airlines. I don't know if they do that at other airlines, but it's something that Jazz does
Hmm.
as thank you for working for an Alpha carrier and staying with an Alpha carrier. Um,
That's good. That's interesting.
that's all it
So
really is.
you get to pick the base and what kind of airplane you want to fly if you get
That
the
being said, that list is generated based on a position bid every month. So we have what's called a mini bid. There's this thing called a standing bid. It's very complicated how it works, but basically, it's like your wish list. So every pilot has access to your standing bid, and right now mine says Toronto CRJ captain, right? So if I wanted to put something different on there, let's say I wanted to fly the Embraer, right? So I put Toronto Embraer captain on there every month the mini bid cycles. So everyone in the company will go in seniority order through their standing bid, and it'll check everyone's wish list, right? So if I'm happy in the position that I'm in, then I leave the standing bid in the position that I'm in, and it'll say, okay, this person's already in the position that he wants, goes to the next person. But if it goes to the next person, it says, um, let's say in my case, I wanted to go Toronto Embraer captain, and it says, oh, there's a spot available for Toronto Embraer captain. It will assign me that spot.
mm,
So now I'm a Toronto Embraer captain, and it'll keep going down the list based on what people's wish list is. So even if you're in a situation, let's say you get Calgary, or let's say you get like Toronto QFO, for example, and it's like I don't want to live in Toronto, right? So you can put in your standing bid right away, like literally the day after you get that for let's say Calgary FO because you live in Edmonton, right? Like let's say
yeah,
you want to
yeah.
live in Calgary, right? Um, so you can put in your standing bid, and if it determines that there's a spot available for you in Calgary, it'll just give you that spot. So it's
Interesting.
very possible. So basically, what I'm trying to say is the standing bid will run through everybody in the company every month. And at the end of the standing bid, once it gets to the end, it figures out what the available positions are. There's still
Okay.
going to be vacancies. And those vacancies are what's going to be offered to the new class at Castle.
Oh, I
So
see.
it's very complicated, but it's entirely also possible for the just because of the way people bid, right? For example, the class before me, their entire class, they didn't even need to pick positions because everything was Toronto CRJ,
Oh,
right? So it's entirely possible for it to all be the same. Or it could be like mine. Mine was like the available positions was like all over the place. I was Vancouver. There was Vancouver CRJ. There was Calgary CRJ. There was Calgary Q. There's Montreal Embraer, Toronto Embraers, all bases, all types.
Mhm.
So it really very very hard to predict what airplane and base you'll be at,
So let's say you've
because
been
it's all.
assigned for CRJ Calgary, for example. How long do you get to keep it?
Well, you can keep it as long as you keep your standing bid like that,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because
But
if
what if you're
if
the
you're
most
happy,
junior?
that's fine. Like you
Hmm.
have to be the most junior.
Hmm.
You can't be kicked out of the base because of this process. It's just because if you want to change what your
Hmm.
position is, then you can put something in your standing bid. So
Mm.
it cycles through everyone first, and if there's it determines that there's an available slot for you. So for example, when I did the upgrade, I changed it. It used to say YVR CRJFO. I changed it to say YYZ CRJ Captain. And then that's how I actually get the promotion, right? Because I can number one, I can only put the CRJ captain position as soon as I have the ATPL in my hand.
Yeah.
I cannot update the standing bid until the ATPL is in my hand.
Mhm.
So I got that, and then I changed it, and then it ran through, and then I got the spot like about a week later saying, okay, there's you've been awarded CRJ captain. It's
Nice.
very complicated, but it's like it's all an automated system, and that's how they determine what positions go to the next available class.
How long is the training to be a captain?
Uh, Just the Sims and all that was maybe like a month, but then Line and Duck was also another month for me. But I also had like a little bit of vacation in there, so and then I moved to
So
Toronto as well, so
more or
I
less
have
2 2 months,
2 months. I think
give or
it's a
take. Yeah,
pretty
yeah, yeah.
pretty fair estimate for an initial class. Like to be an FO, I'd say it's about 3.
So
But yeah,
An FO with who's ripe to be upgraded. What should he or she should expect in terms of the training to be a captain? What's out there? What's behind the door?
um, so your first little bit is it's like a 4-day class of what it is to be a captain, basically. They
Mhm.
get you to like really define the role, like what is being the captain of an airplane? What is leadership? What is professionalism? Like what are these like very basic terms? We start off with that. There's then some other stuff. We talk about PAs. We talk about handling emergency situations. It's like all these like classroom lectures of different stuff, and it's all CRM related. Um, from there, you go into the IPT, which is basically it's like a there's some monitors that look like the cockpit, and you can kind of like it's like touchscreen just to like practice basically your flows. Obviously, it's a little bit different on the captain side
Yeah,
than it is
yeah,
on the FO
yeah.
side. So it's like you're learning how to like just kind of run through the flows. Then after that, you go into the sim, and the sim is mostly for the RJ. The first part of it was we have a heads up display
Yep.
on the left hand side. So it's learning how to use the heads up display basically. For the first
Mhm.
2 sims, it's like really getting used to that. And then after that, we do basically all of our recurrent training. So they want us to see everything again from the left seat. So basically every single emergency or any like malfunction they'll throw at you. So the flight control malfunctions, they'll give you engine failures, of course, PPC prep. But it's also like emergency descent, doing stalls at high altitudes, stuff like this, steep turns.
Yeah.
We'll do steep turns as well, right? It's just kind of
Do
doing
you
all of
do
them.
steep turns in a 705 environment?
We don't need to demonstrate it on a PPC, but we do need to demonstrate it in training.
In training, but in real life, do you?
No, 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 bro, we're not gonna do a real one. But
Yeah.
it's really easy to do. Like
But I
it's
mean, I
fine. Like
wonder how it feels like being a passenger when the pilot is doing a steep turn. That would be
it's
really weird.
wonky. It's 250 knots, 10,000 feet is our like profile for it.
Yeah.
And we just it's the same thing. It's like a commercial level steep turn. It's just in a jet. Um, my favorite one is the approach to stalls. The stalls. Sorry, not the approach to stalls. The high altitude stalls. You do a stall
How is
at
it different to the regular
because
stall?
you're used to it. Okay, if you're stalling in this in um, in a normal 172, for example, you stall, nose goes down, and then you just eventually pull back and recover. Right?
Yeah.
It's just nice and easy. If you're at 36,000 feet, the air is so thin
Not a lot of atmosphere, yeah.
you can't do that. You literally cannot. And they demonstrate this to you. If you try to just pull up like you normally would do a normal stall recovery, you enter a secondary stall immediately.
Yeah.
because you're putting so much G's on the airplane. Even like 1.1, 1.2 G is enough to stall the airplane again because there's
Mhm.
not enough airflow going over the wings. So you actually have the only way is to, as you know, reduce the angle of attack, right?
Yeah.
But you have to keep it nose down for a long period of time. And it's like you are pulling up, but it's very, very, very slow. It's the slowest stall recovery you'll do. When you do a stall at 36,000 feet, I, I think the best recovery I ever did from 36,000 feet, I lost 5,000 feet
Wow.
in the recovery. Just because if you pull up too much, you'll stall the airplane again.
Too quick.
And then you lose. So it's like this very, very. You have the low speed buffet and the high speed buffet, and it's like a sandwich. You're just
Mhm.
trying to like not put them together, not put it together, not put it together. And it's really really cool because it's like you're just experiencing the aerodynamics of the airplane because it's like if you pull up too much, you will stall it again.
Mhm.
We do stuff
Interesting.
like wind shear, TCAS, EGPWS avoidance, like they'll fly us into a mountain and it's like max thrust and then we power out of the mountain, man. Stuff like that. So it's all sorts of stuff like that where you get to just see everything again. Then the last part of it is your PIC assessment. It's a loft, so basically they'll kind of make it look like a real flight. They'll pair you with a random first officer, like a brand spanking new first officer,
Yeah.
and they'll give you like a difficult scenario. So mine was like one thrust reverser inoperative. We push back, and then all of a sudden I get the aft cargo door warning message saying why the cargo door's open. And I'm like, okay, so I have to shut down, get them to cycle the door. The indication was still on, so I had to MEL it, all of that. And then we take off. There's a thunderstorm. I have to avoid it. And then
So if
we had a
the warning
yeah.
light, if the warning light stays, you just MEL it. Maybe it's
Yeah,
just a sensor.
yeah. Well, I mean, you have to call maintenance. You have to call
Yeah.
maintenance, and then they'll decide what to do.
Mhm.
That's the whole thing, right? They're just testing your captain decision
Yeah.
making at
Yeah.
that point. If you can make the correct decisions, and then after that, if you pass that, then you can get your PPC recommend and then do your PPC. So, and then once you're done your PPC, then you're just going off to line and dock. It's about 40 hours of line and dock, and then you're released. So,
How would you describe if you can still remember your first day after
oh man,
the
the
training
first day
and
in the left seat is
first
like,
left seat day?
wow, what a day, man. I think it's probably one of the most special days in my aviation career so far. Like it's
Oh yeah.
very it's awesome, man. It's so powerful to finally be in that left seat after like all the training and all the blood, sweat, and tears. It's awesome, man. It's like
Mhm.
I compare it to like first solo almost, like that kind of
Mhm.
like level of like, whoa,
Yeah.
I
100.
look at me, I'm the captain now. Hey, buddy,
Yeah, that's
it's been super nice chatting with you, but I do have another meeting I have to go to at
yeah.
2 o'clock here, so I do have to sign off.
Awesome. Awesome.
But
Awesome, man. Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks for your time,
Well,
man.
thank you for inviting me over to this because I love talking about stuff like this and just chatting. And I don't know if anyone's gonna watch it or see it or anything like that,
Yeah,
but
for
if they
sure.
do, like I hope people find it valuable, and it's just nice to share my experience, even just to you, right? Like, it's
Yeah,
just awesome
100%.
to chat. All right,
Yeah.
man.
Thank you so much. You've been
No
very
problem.
generous. Hope to see you sometime.
Yeah, see you around. Take care.
All right. See ya. Thank you.
Bye.